Alright, ANAXA's full kit is finally out. And let me tell you, he power-crept Silverwolf in every possible way. There's no doubt he's going to be the best in slot character on the Herta's team. But hey, you can also throw him into any team to dish out some serious damage. Let's talk about his talent first, because you can understand his kit properly from there. So, every time ANAXA goes in for the attack on some enemies, he hits them once and throws on a random type weakness that sticks around for 3 turns. And get this, it's always the weakness type that the target doesn't already have. Now, when ANAXA is out there on the battlefield, if he manages to slap on at least 5 different type weaknesses onto an enemy, they get hit with this thing called the exposed nature state. And when they're in that state, ANAXA can dish out even more damage to them. Plus, if he uses a basic attack or skill on an enemy in the exposed nature state, he gets to unleash another skill for free. No skill points needed. And if the enemy he targeted bites the dust before he can use that extra skill, it just moves on to another random enemy. Now, onto his technique. When he busts out this move, it makes enemies in a certain area straight up terrified. Those scaredy cats will run away from ANAXA for a solid 10 seconds. And here's the kicker. If ANAXA dives into battle by attacking one of these terrified enemies, he slaps a weakness of the attacker's type onto every single enemy around. It's like spreading the fear, you know? Moving on to skill. So, he's got this move that dishes out wind damage based on ANAXA's attack to one enemy, and on top of that, it also hits 4 times. Each hit deals wind damage to a random enemy, focusing on those who haven't been hit yet. Now, let's chat about his ultimate move. It puts all the enemy units in this ascension state and deals wind damage based on ANAXA's attack to all of them. When they're in the ascension state, they get hit with all kinds of weaknesses for a turn, and if they don't have control res, they're basically stuck and can't do anything. It's kind of like being frozen or trapped, you know? Now let's talk about traces. So first up, we've got Trace 1. When he uses his basic attack, he gets an extra 10 energy. And at the start of his turn, if there are no enemies in the exposed nature state, he gets a sweet 30 energy boost. Now, onto Trace 2. Depending on how many erudition characters are in the team, he gets some cool bonuses. If there's just one, his crit damage goes up by a whopping 140%. But if there are 2 or more erudition characters, all allies get a nice 30% boost in damage. Moving on to Trace 3. For every different weakness type an enemy has, ANAXA's damage ignores 3% of their defense, up to a max of 7 weakness types. That's a potential 21% defense shred on those enemies. And lastly, let's chat about his light cone. It boosts his crit rate by 18% to 30% and gives him 10 energy at the start of his turn. Plus, when he uses an ability, enemies who get debuffed during that time have their defense reduced by 6% to 12% for 2 turns, stacking up to 2 times. So I highly recommend to get that Eidolon 1 because it gives you a sweet 16% defense shred, and when you pair it with Trace 3, you're looking at a total of 37% defense shred. If you're thinking about going for E1S1, you're looking at a whopping 43% defense shred. So yeah, definitely worth considering.